In August of this year, the Irish government brought in a statutory instrument which was peddled by the mainstream media, primarily RTE and the Irish Times, as being a mandatory compulsion upon people to wear masks pretty much everywhere, including supermarkets and so on and so forth. Those of us in the know, as soon as the statutory instrument was published, and they have to publish all law in this country, statutory instruments, resolutions of county councils, and so on and so forth. Everything from the Constitution through primary legislation of the Oireachtas through secondary legislation, including statutory instruments and county council edicts, they all have to be published. So within 5 minutes of it being published, I got a copy of it and I had a read of it, and I said, this is unenforceable. That did not surprise me, because I'm used to the Irish government and their wicked ways at this stage. Now, then other people in the know took a look at the statutory instrument and reached the same position that I did and said, yes, it's unenforceable. So, the usual fifth column of letter writers started writing into the Irish Times and saying that this is unenforceable and we need to be making it enforceable and getting round those two loopholes, as they interpreted it, those two loopholes of extreme distress and difficulty breathing. So, that particular rearguard, or vanguard, if you like, of the Ranelagh woke establishment came out in full force in the Irish Times letters page in August of this year, 2020. And they pointed out what I had pointed out about the statutory instrument pertaining to masks. And it's December and nothing happened. And this makes the point that they're all light and no heat with the Irish government. It's all light and no heat, and it's nothing to worry about particularly. So today now, and I'm not sure how verifiable or true this is, I'm seeing the notion that Micheál Martin is now talking about using the licence fee to also subsidise print media. That is easily up there in the same firmament of nonsense as compulsory masks. It's not going to happen. It's not going to work. Don't worry about it. I was not surprised by what happened with masks because, as already explained, I know the wicked ways of the Irish government and that they're all talk and no action. This is gaslighting, what they're talking about now, about, using the licence fee to subsidise print media. But let's talk about it on their terms. If we use the licence fee to also subsidise print media, that's not going to work. That is the psychopaths again, what we've already said. The last roll of the dice, going too far, overplaying their hand. Because that, by its description, is a state-subsidised, approved media. That would shame the North Koreans. That would embarrass the North Koreans. And this is coming from a position of fear and weakness on their part. Don't imagine that it's coming from a position of strength. It's not. It's coming from fear and weakness. It's not going to work. People have had enough of RTE anyway, aside from the fact that they're now going to be asked to essentially subsidise the Irish Times or anybody else in that particular woke circuit of the Irish Times. So it's nothing to worry about. But from a constitutional point of view, what it's doing is it's interfering in free expression, because if you are not part of that woke group, you can claim a disadvantage by the fact that they're getting subsidised and you're not. So you want to start a newspaper, you want to start a blog, you want to start a website. You cannot get that subsidy that's given to the insiders. So immediately you've got a case because they have been put at a commercial advantage over you. The government in Ireland and the state shall not take a position which effectively skews or tips the scales, skews the balance, if you like, or tips the scales in the private commercial sector. leaving aside RTE, the rest of our media, say Virgin, the Irish Times, are at least technically private commercial enterprises. That's at least technically. The Irish Times, it has, until quite recently, the Irish Times was very reputable, but it has become essentially a Fine Gael mouthpiece. This leads on then to the character of Micheál Martin. Micheál Martin is in a lot of trouble because he made the terrible cardinal single mistake of not doing NCEA, no contact ever again, with Leo Varadkar. As soon as Varadkar became Taoiseach, that's when Martin should have pulled the plug. He wouldn't have got any less seats than he got anyway. He had a useless turnout in this year's general election, so it's not as if, staying his hand helped him. It didn't. Micheál Martin is the Wicker Man, and he has a flawed character, and the flaw in his character was that he did not want to be the only leader of Fianna Fáil who was not Taoiseach. That was a terrible, terrible, terrible weakness. So instead he became Taoiseach effectively with Varadkar's permission. And that is tainting and colouring his entire tenure as Taoiseach. This is aside from the fact that what we're seeing now is that Micheál Martin is intrinsically a weak man. After the scandal in RTE, in which a group of the usual insiders had a hoolie for a retiring colleague who is a reception manager, charge hand in other words. She was a charge hand in the reception, doing the rosters and all this kind of thing, arranging the flowers maybe. No, they probably had somebody, they're so unionised and demarcated that if had somebody else do the flowers. This woman did the rosters. So she was retiring and nobody wore a mask or socially distanced. And John Williams, the head of news and current affairs, was at that party. And this was Micheál Martin's opportunity to say, right, we're going to defund RTE and sack the lot of you. We're going to use Montrose for a direct provision centre until we deport all of those people. But in the interim, while we still operate that particular racket of direct provision, we'll use Montrose for direct provision, or refugees, or the homeless, or something. RTE is now being defunded. You're losing your state subsidy. You're losing your status as a semi-state body. We'll do that by Christmas. That would have been a leader. And he would have got a lot of support for that. No. That's not Micheál. That's not the Martin way of doing things. No. With his spindly little arms. Like an extra from Live Aid. Showing us all how healthy he is. Like Harris as well. But you see, Harris has the fool's pardon of actually genuinely being mentally subnormal. Whereas Martin, at least on the face of it, is not mentally subnormal. Varadkar and Harris obviously are. But Micheál Martin has deteriorated personally, socially and psychically since he became Taoiseach. This is because he took on the role of king for a day. Remember the Wicker Man? He took on the role of king for a day. And it was a poison chalice, and Varadkar made sure it was a poison chalice from the start. Don't drink from a poison chalice. You're better off. Keep away. Okay, Micheál, you didn't become Taoiseach. It's no one cares. No one cares if you didn't become Taoiseach. No one cares. In a sense, though, it's narcissism on Martin's part. So Martin is now actually becoming screwy. He's losing the plot. So, for instance, he said that the banks didn't get a bailout, and everybody said, is this man going insane? Because, you see, he's not going to get that Club Montrose free pass that Varadkar gets. It's not to do with the personality. It's to do with the fact that Varadkar is the woke messiah to a whole inner set in RTE particularly, and the Irish Times and some other places as well. I think News Talk or Q something or other FM. It's a personality cult with Varadkar, and he doesn't understand that. Martin does not understand that. So that whole degree of adulation and complete excusal, if you like, for Varadkar's very profound personal inadequacies. Varadkar's a criminal. He has admitted on 2 occasions to interfering in public selection processes. That's corrupt. I mean, the freetards use the term corruption all the time. They use it left, right and centre all the time. But Varadkar actually is corrupt in a criminal sense. Not at all. Not going to be investigated. Not going to be investigated. Club Montrose won't hear of it. But that's a personal thing. That's the cult that Varadkar has. That's not going to extend to Micheál Martin, and it's most certainly not going to extend to Fianna Fáil. So this is why Martin was a sucker for taking on the role of Taoiseach, because effectively he's a Fine Gael Taoiseach. He's taking all the flak, he's the mudguard, he's the shock absorber for Fine Gael and the Greens. On a slight digression, I noticed that the existing, if derelict, railway line between Navan and Kingscourt is being removed, and they're putting in a Greenway. Now, a Greenway was put in between Westport and Achill on a railway line that had been removed in 1936. So the installation of that Greenway in Mayo between Westport and Achill was a very positive step. But what the Greens are doing is they're exploiting the positivity of the Great Western Greenway down in Mayo as a ruse for dismantling existing intact railways. This is the same party that's now making it impossible for people to drive in Dublin, and nationally is going to make it impossible for people to own a car. Don't worry, this will pass. This will pass. Do you think the farm lobby, who are extremely powerful in this country, are going to tolerate having their jeeps and their 40-year-old vehicles that they use to go up and down the mountains and the bogs? They're going to be confiscated from them. We'll see what happens. Watch how the farmers come out about that one. Because if you're stuck down in the mountains of Wicklow and it's frozen up and it's snowing, you have to have a jeep that works, and I'm afraid it's only diesel's going to do it. Not even petrol. Only diesel's going to do it. But no. This is, part of that trajectory of releasing wolves across the Bog of Allen. The Greens are utterly 100% psychotic, round-the-bend lulas. Absolute lulas. The Greens are. They are Fine Gael on bikes who are not even trying to hide their psychosis. They're no more psychotic in truth than Fine Gael. Anybody who's a dyed-in-the-wool Fine Gaeler is, in my opinion, automatically mentally ill. Thomas Sheridan talks about the obsession of a certain crowd of people in Britain with the Tories. He's right. I remember the irony in the 1980s of alternative comedians on Channel 4 giving out about the Tories, whereas actually the Tories had set up Channel 4. This is not something that they would admit to. The Labour government never set up the independent second channel in the UK. It was the Tories when they came in 1979, and they had that running in 2.5 years. Margaret Thatcher hated the BBC, probably almost as much as I personally hate RTE. Margaret Thatcher was aware that the BBC had 2 terrestrial UHF channels, BBC One, which was regionalised across the UK, and BBC Two, which was much less regionalised. There was also ITV, which only had 1 channel, the IBA, by the way. The owner of ITV was the IBA. They then sublet it to franchise holders across various regions of Great Britain, Northern Ireland, the Isle of Man and Channel Islands. But the owner of the independent broadcasting channel in Great Britain was the IBA. And the IBA actually was a state body, but it was entirely separate from the BBC. So Margaret Thatcher wanted to get at the BBC. She detested the BBC. And she felt the best way to do that was to create a bigger balance by creating a second independent channel, which would also belong to the IBA. So that's how Channel 4 came into existence. Channel 4 did not have any production facilities. Everything was bought in for Channel 4, which was brilliant. It was groundbreaking. If you look at the first 10 years of Channel 4, they ripped the rule book up. Jeremy Isaacs was the first CEO of Channel 4, and he was a very courageous man, a genuine programme maker and broadcaster, and he stood up to public opinion, and he stood up to Parliament, because Channel 4 had a parliamentary mandate to do what they were doing, and he pushed it to its limit. That's what good TV production is about. Courage, knowing your stuff, having the intellect, and going for it. And Channel 4 in its first 10 years was that, which is why in 1991 the British government, I heard the Tories slipping on my lips there, but they had changed and they didn't like what Channel 4 had become in its first 10 years. Channel 4 was neutered in 1991 by an Act of Parliament. I could go into further details about that, but Channel 4 has never returned to that absolute razor-sharp courage that they had in its first 10 years. People like Micheál Gray will testify to that. The first 10 years of Channel 4 was like the Wild West. They were breaking new ground. Channel 4 was incredibly groundbreaking. But anyway, here we are, and that was the Tories. They set up Channel 4. So Thomas talks about the people who bang on all about the Tories, and they're wrong. That's just too black and white. But it could be easier to be more black and white about Fine Gael, particularly since Enda Kenny took over. Fine Gael are fascists, and they're doing everything they can to trample on very long established freedoms and precedents that we have in this country. Because there are two things. There are things that are set down explicitly in our constitution, but that's not enough. There are all the other conventions and precedents that we have in this country that we take for granted, such as judicial selection. Varadkar and Helen McEntee. Now, Helen McEntee wouldn't have the intellect to know what she was doing, or to know the implications of what she was doing. Neither would Varadkar. But the fact of the matter is that they have completely tarnished our judiciary. That started when Fine Gael took over in 2011, and immediately they were moving to remove, and they succeeded in removing, the constitutional bar on reducing judicial salary. That constitutional bar on reducing judicial salary is a very important safeguard. It means that politicians cannot punish judges. But no. At the time there was a lot of anger towards Fianna Fáil. Judges were seen as being public servants, whereas in fact they are in a very special, unique role, our judiciary is. No, they were just seen as being like politicians, and the judges didn't do enough good PR at the time to be able to get around this. So Fine Gael are committed to destroying the independence of our judiciary. They're very committed to it. They don't want a free and independent judiciary. But it's okay, because they're incompetent and they're lazy and they're stupid and they don't think in the long term. This is a process we're going through. So the notion then of, subsidising selected media outlets, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's gaslighting. It's just nonsense. I think the reason why people are getting very, very, very contemptuous and angry towards Micheál Martin is because, maybe naively, they expected better. Micheál Martin, at least we thought it, was a more substantial and more likeable individual than Varadkar. But then, when you reflect upon it, Martin, the only thing that concerned Micheál Martin was becoming Taoiseach. He didn't care about anything else. Was he willing? Had he turned round after the scandal in RTE of the retiring colleagues, the reception manager's retirement party, had he turned around and said, well, okay, we're defunding RTE, look what you've done here, then he could be heading for a majority in government. That's not Micheál Martin. That's not the way Martin ticks, because he's a coward. Every inch of his soul, every molecule of Micheál Martin is a coward. It comes over in his wishy-washy little Charlie Brown smile. Charlie Brown was about, the Peanuts character was much... I'm sorry to insult him. Here I am insulting a fictitious cartoon character, but no, I don't want to sully Charlie Brown by associating him with Micheál Martin. Micheál Martin got in with a psychopath, Varadkar. He made himself subject to him, and he made himself beholden to Varadkar. This is why, at my level, I refuse to take any financing. I don't take any financing for the litigation that I take. I don't take any monetisation from my YouTube channel, because I will set my own agenda and I will be beholden to nobody.